for thriving couples. We have three amazing guests. We've been rocking it with our guests. Our guests have been rocking it. It's been a really cool scenario to be able to see them and everything that they present. Such cool information. Um, so I just kind of want you guys to keep having that. I love that you're able to have it. Um, to get started, too, a couple things is we're live on. It looks like we're live on YouTube and we're live in the Facebook group, the Shine Campus Facebook book group. It doesn't look like we're live on my work page, which is fine because you guys have so many other ways to see me. So you guys can send your people to those different pages. So the Facebook group is the Shine Campus Facebook group. And then on YouTube, you just look up a Thomas Castro and you'll be able to find me on there so that you guys can stream that. Okay. So real quick, a concept that I just want to give you guys, and you'll see this theme accident. It's not the cool thing is that it's happening throughout all of our relationship conversations. And I want you guys to really pay attention to this. Like, in order for your relationships to thrive and get to the places that it needs to get to, it's going to take you doing things different. And as much as we get stuck on, hey, somebody else needs to be doing it, or what about when this person does this? Don't get stuck on what about when somebody does this differently, because what's happening is you're putting that into your energy and then you're creating something in your relationship. And the theme that ends up happening, everybody's talking to you about getting to a better place in your relationship and the strategies that you can use to be able to get to that spot. Will you allow that as a question? And I'm going to challenge you on something. The reason that we don't always allow it is because sometimes it's easier to try to figure out how somebody else is going to do things different. It doesn't take as much mental energy as it does, as it will be if I try to figure out how I get things to be different. How do I become more influential? So it's easier, and that's the challenge I want to give you. It's easier for you to go and try to figure out what's the things I need to say to somebody else to make them behave. Like, what's the things that I need to do in my relationship so that my partner will comply. Like, it's easier to come up with that thing. The real hard thing is to be the person that you need to be in relationship that's actually going to affect change. So I'm so excited for you guys to keep having more information and really get what it is that you need to get. Again, three guests today. We'll be going until 4:30, and so let's go ahead and get started. Our first guest, I actually, if I'm saying it right, actually, Rachel, you are from London, is what you told me, right?
I am, yeah, London, England.
Yeah. So Rachel is from London. I'll let her introduce herself, and then and I'm gonna disappear, and she's gonna give her presentation. Thank you for coming on, Rachel.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hello, everyone. I'm not sure where the audience are, but if you can put up with my British accent for the next 10 minutes, and that is wonderful. I'll try and pronounce everything as best as I can. So, I'm Rachel Rose. I'm a relationship and boundaries coach. I'm also a Reiki master and a shamanic and alchemy practitioner. So, my presentation is called Make Love, Not War: Transforming Conflict into Compassion. I think this is such an important topic, particularly when it comes to relationships, as we'll dive in to see how much of an important component conflict is and how much more of an important component conflict resolution is. So let's dive in. So, why do we as a society struggle with conflict? Well, it's really interesting because particularly in the British culture, we think about conflict, we think, oh gosh, that's uncomfortable. It very much comes from the patriarchal way of thinking in terms of anything to do with feelings or expressing your truth is something negative that needs to be pushed down. So when we buy into that kind of paradigm, what we're doing is pushing down what it is that we really want to say, our vulnerabilities, or anything that makes us seem too seen. We're pushing that down, and we're doing that just so we can have a bit more peace. Now, of course, this just buys us a little bit of peace, because whatever we don't resolve builds up. Resentment then builds up and builds up and builds up, and then before you know it, you've put all of you've made sure you have so much peace in your relationship that all it takes is one tiny argument where one or both of you are a ticking time bomb, and boom, the relationship in its whole entirety is in jeopardy, all because you didn't speak your truth the first time. Now, I'm going to just bust this myth right now, because I think a lot of people feel that, oh, okay, if, me and whatever, your partner is called, we don't ever fight, that is not a good sign. A relationship without any conflict is an unhealthy one. And I'm not saying a relationship where there's conflict consistently and it's quite clear that you're not compatible at all is healthy, but you need some conflict. And why do we need that? Conflict actually helps us build intimacy. It helps us get to know each other. It helps us actually move forward in the relationship. Now, the reason it does this is because all relationships are part of our spiritual awakening. So every single person that you encounter in your life has been specifically planted into your life path to help you up level. And conflict is just yet another catalyst where you can use that to grow as a person, use that to really get to know not only the other person, yourself, but really improve other relationships as well. So please don't fear conflict. In fact, learning about how to solve conflicts is going to be one of your superpowers from today, beyond, and in all areas of your life. So we're going to be talking about some of the main ways that you can really transform how you actually look at your partner in a relationship, and also conflict in general, so that you can see it as your best friend and you can actually start expecting it, because guess what? No one is perfect. So you're going to run into those arguments, and why not be well equipped for them and ready to tackle them full on? So why don't we dive straight in? So conflict resolution mindset shift number 1. Don't believe that you shouldn't let the sun go down on your anger. So I was at my cousin's wedding at the weekend. It was so good. Oh my God. I wish I didn't have to go home, but I did. And the priest that did the ceremony, he said, you should never let the sun go down on your anger. And everyone was like, yes. And I thought, oh my God, that is the most toxic thing ever. And I'll tell you why. So when we think about emotions from a psychological perspective, we have emotions such as happiness, elation, excitement. They are way, way at the top of, let's call it, the emotional scale. And things like anger, sadness, deep depression are at the lower scale. Now, when I say higher and lower, we're not talking about good or bad. We're talking about frequency. So imagine, for example, we're talking about someone singing. So if someone sings quite low, then they just sing low, right? You don't see that as good or bad. And if someone sings quite high, then you just see that as someone having a high voice. Exactly the same with emotions. They're neither good or bad. So when we're talking about emotions and how human beings actually operate with these, expecting someone to go from supreme anger, when you really pissed your partner off, excuse me, I hope we can curse. I've cursed already. Okay, maybe it's too late. But going from extreme anger to, okay, everything's fine, is really unnatural. Sometimes, depending on the scenario, it is possible. You can jump that quickly because maybe it isn't so much of a big thing. Maybe you're both laughing about it and you can move on quite quickly. But there are going to be situations where you can't go from like completely angry with your partner and let down to, okay, it's fine, let's move on. And guess what? That's completely normal, because the only people that can shift that quickly from one spectrum to the other are those that have been clinically diagnosed with a mood disorder. So that just puts things into perspective for you, that this isn't something that you should be expected to do in every single dynamic. In fact, it's encouraged for you to really just sit with your emotions and tune in to see how you actually feel. I would really encourage you all to say to your partner, okay, how are you feeling right now? With my partner, we actually say, okay, I'm feeling a 3, or I'm feeling a 4, or I'm feeling a 5, whatever that is for you guys. You can agree on where you are, and then you can also agree on how you're going to come back. So the main thing that you want to focus on is nervous system regulation. So when we're pushing someone to go from 0 to okay, everything's fine again, we are really trying to push their nervous system into overdrive. And a dysregulated nervous system looks like irritability. It looks like digestive problems. It looks like insomnia. These are not great things. So giving your partner back that time to go and regulate themselves, and self-regulation can look very different for a lot of people. Sometimes people just need a nap. Sometimes they just need donuts. I know I need donuts when I want to self-regulate. Sometimes they just need a trip. Maybe that trip is a weekend. Maybe it's a week. The main thing is, don't make your partner wrong for their method of self-regulation, and don't make them wrong for not adhering to your timeline of coming back and talking about the situation again. So number 2, what's another mind shift that we can take? Mindset shift even. Do not rush to forgiveness and overuse the word sorry. So we've touched on this a little bit about the emotional scale and how extreme anger sits on one side and forgiveness sits on another. But let's talk about forgiveness as a process, because it's not just a matter of saying sorry. And I just wish more people understood that. Real forgiveness is all about really reflecting on what went down. What is it that's happened? What is it that can be forgiven by this person, in this case, your partner? And how can I also forgive myself? Sometimes we get so wrapped up in how we react in a particular situation that we forget to actually forgive ourselves. That's all part of the entire process. And we need to know, why, how this happened. And normally in a breakdown of communication, like conflict is fundamentally, we have not been true to our integrity. We have not stood in our integrity in some point. And in that forgiveness process, when you're reflecting, this is when you need to step back and see, okay, when is the first time that I wasn't in integrity with myself? Okay, so instead of, just jumping in, saying sorry, overusing this word, instead, you really want to learn about your partner's core wounds. So essentially, when we're in conflict mode, our wounds are activated, and all of us have a mother and father wound to a certain degree. Again, because we're not raised by robots, everybody is imperfect in some way. And so learning about your partner's core wounds is really going to help you come from a place of compassion and love, and really help build emotional security when you're coming back and you've regulated yourself, I should say, and you're trying to solve this conflict. You're coming from a place where you're trying to build emotional security, knowing what it is that triggers your partner. And core wounds can look anything from like abandonment wounds. Was your partner raised by a very domineering parent, partner? I've been saying partner so many times. Or were they raised by a domineering parent? What was their parents' parenting style? All of these things will affect your partner's way of showing up in the relationship, the way they show up in conflict, and also their attachment styles in general. And another mindset shift for conflict resolution is not to hold on to past hurts indefinitely. So this is something that I think I've definitely worked on throughout my life. You feel like you've won by holding on to them, like you did this, you did that, you did that. And all that is just toxic, not only for your partner, but also for yourself. So just think about some of the most successful corporations. I'm talking about like the big boys out there. They have so much data, so much personal data, like an infinite amount of data. They don't even keep their data indefinitely. Why? Because they're focused on expanding. They're focusing on, being the most successful that they can year on year. That's not their focus. They don't really care about the past mistakes. They're learning from them. And for anything that's old facts that can't be reused and can't be alchemized into something positive, they're getting rid of. So this is how we need to really think, instead of just holding on to all of these different grudges and all of these letdowns that we've had in a relationship, step away and remind yourself of the bigger picture. Does this particular situation make my partner, such a bad person? Does this particular situation characterize how my partner is in general? Does it overshadow everything that they've done for me, or how they show up for me, or what we've built together? So just remembering that just takes you out of that survival mode where you're just so tunnel vision and focused on how hurt you are. You're realizing that actually this is just a really small blip. And as I said at the beginning of this session, that conflict is part of any relationship. So just expect it, and gear yourself onto it. Oh, there's quite a lot of comments. Oh, okay. I'll ignore those. Right. So I hope that really helps all of you just really think about conflict in a much more healthy way. And for those of you who want to go a further step, if you're really curious about some of the things I've touched on, some of the psychology, some of the science, and some of the energy perspective, then I really encourage you head over to my website and book a love compatibility report review. Now, in this report, you can do one of two things. You can get it just for yourself, or you can get it for yourself and your partner. But ultimately, you're going to get the same information in terms of what are the fundamental things that are coming up for me as, and I'll tell you the methodology I use. It's astrology and numerology, which have played a huge part in really healing so many relationship wounds and really seeing relationship for the spiritual experience that they are. You're going to see a lot of different patterns that are very inevitable and you're inherently born with, and knowing what it is that are going to be your weaknesses when it comes to conflict, when it comes to relationships, is really going to make you stand from a strong position regardless of what relationship you're in, because you know what triggers you, so you can stand in your best light, and then you can move forward to have that compassionate view when it comes to your partner as well. So I think we've timed. Yep, because Thomas is back. Great. Wow. I can't believe I'm on time. I'm never on time for anything. So thank you. Thank you everyone for being here.
Rachel, thank you so much. I appreciate you delivering. So you guys can see her contact information on the thank you page that she has on her slide, but then also I dropped it in the comments. If you're on YouTube, it's in the comments there. If you're on Facebook, either one, it's in all of that. And then also, if for some reason you can't get it through there, if you're rewatching this at a different time, you could always email me or message me, and I'll make sure that you have that information. Okay.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Rachel. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good day.
I'll
have a good.
You too. So Rachel is actually 13 hours. I think we were doing the math earlier. She's 13 hours away from us. And so it kind of is a cool thing for her to come on. I think it's 11. If we did it at 3:30, it's 11:30 her time. And so yeah, I'm totally excited about her being able to come on and just kind of help us out. So anyhow, all right. So while we're waiting for our next guest to start, I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about something which to me is important for you guys to have. You know, when you're trying to do your relationship, you know, keeping that focus that says that, man, my partner is special and doing the best that they can is really important. And one thing that helps us to keep that focus is if we're able to focus more on seeing the things that we're doing as even, or equal is not the right word, but just as useful. So a lot of times we don't see what we're doing as useful. I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. Let's say that the wife takes care of the kids and that's the thing that she does, but the husband maybe brings in a lot of money. Both things are super useful to the family. And it's easy for us to reduce in our minds what one of us does for whatever reason. In this case, maybe the husband doesn't value that he brings in tons of money to the home as much as all the wife is doing at the house. What's important is that we don't see it like a comparison trap. It's important for us to really value what it is that we're doing, but then that helps us to translate and value what it is that our partner is doing. So I think that that's a really important concept for us to be able to have in order for us to really propel the kind of energy that we need in our relationship. All right. So our next guests are in, Christopher and Nada. So let's bring them in. How are you two doing?
Hello. How are you doing, Thomas?
I'm doing good. So if I remember correctly, you guys are in, is it Bali?
Yeah, we're in Bali.
Yeah, so another time zone change, you guys, that we're bringing to you. And I'll let you guys introduce yourself. I'm going to jump off the screen and you guys could do your presentation. I really appreciate you guys coming on. what I can see or understand, it seems like your guys' schedule is really busy. So for you guys to get us in here, I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And, thank you for creating this summit on helping couples thrive. This is a very important topic, and I'm sure everybody watching is going to benefit massively from all your guests here.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. And we'll talk to you guys in a second, okay?
Okay.
So hello. Thank you for watching. If you are watching, we want to celebrate you for taking the step forward, for wanting to adjust, harmonize, upgrade your relationship wherever you are in your relationship. The thing is, nobody really teaches us how to be in a happy, thriving relationship. And then we get into one and then we're like, okay, what happened? It started off at a honeymoon phase. What happened? And the thing is, there's a lot that goes into a relationship. And Christopher and I, we're so dedicated to help couples thrive in their relationship. My name is Neda, and I have been a spiritual coach for over 15 years. I specialize in helping women rise into their full queen energy and master the art of conscious relationships.
And my name is Christopher Lyon, and I've been helping men for over 10 years now, understanding how to activate their masculinity, understanding how to show up as men in relationships, because there's been a lot of distortion and false ideas of what it means to be a man. So being able to really be an empowered man is going to really shift how you show up in your relationship in a very healthy way.
Yes, such an important topic. And what we find more often than not in relationships is the biggest issue couples face is that the relationship polarity is out of place. Women start behaving more in the masculine role, and men start to tend to behave more in the feminine role. And we'll talk more about that. Together, we have an Ascension Academy. It's called newearthmasters.com. And we offer so many different online courses on how people can rise into mastery in different topics of their life. May it be healing, may it be abundance, may it be their psychic abilities, but we specialize in relationships. And within our Divine Union Academy, we really focus on three main things. We help couples really deepen their love and really create beautiful, intimate, soulful connection, and really master their sacred sexuality. We find that when couples really realign to these 3 points, then their relationship starts to move into an upward spiral, and that honeymoon phase that started in the beginning of a relationship starts to come back online, and it starts to become a honeymoon relationship. That phase doesn't need to end. And the way that we do that is we really focus on 4 main things. The first thing is we really help people heal the past. A lot of people don't know, but our relationship with how we were raised with our parents growing up really affect our relationship. And they're hidden traumas in our subconscious mind. So we help people really heal the past so they can be ready for a fruitful future. The second thing that we do is we help people really align their queen and king energy in a relationship. When a woman rises into her queen essence and knows her self-worth and drops into her softness and knows how to, dance like a swan in a relationship, then, the man can rise into his king energy and be that leader, that warrior. And I'm talking energetically here. I'm talking emotionally. I'm not talking just physically. And then the third thing that we do is we teach people how to master the art of conscious relationships and bond, which is the fourth thing, and bond and really create their kingdom/queendom together in harmony, in union, in mastery.
And we go into many facets of what it means to build a healthy union with your partner. So we go into, the importance of conscious communication.
Very important.
Which is absolutely life-changing. So when you're in a relationship and things are arising, because things will arise for both of you in a relationship, maybe past traumas will surface, maybe past limitations will surface for both of you. But if you understand how to communicate consciously through a place of love, through a place of, we are one team, we're going to work through whatever this is, this will allow you to go into deeper and deeper levels of your union, because once you understand that you are working together harmoniously, you will be able to tap into deeper levels of intimacy, deeper levels of vulnerability, deeper levels of unconditional love for one another.
Yeah, this is such an important topic because you know what happens when people come into a relationship with like a bit of like past trauma stuck in their subconscious mind. What ends up happening is the first layer of the relationship, you know, the couple's in a honeymoon phase, they show each other like the best part of themselves. But that doesn't really last long because then, you know, your true self wants to come online. And what happens is two people start to trigger one another. And when they trigger one another, if people haven't resolved those relationships and don't really know how to have conscious conversations, what happens is they start to move into like the blame game. And if a couple moves into a blame game, like you did this to me and you did that to me, then they've already created separation between their hearts. And that bridge that was once there from one heart to another won't really be there. And then the relationship starts to become sour. But when we start to become more aware of what are the things that trigger us and then resolve them and work together as a couple, so you heal each other through your love for one another, then that bridge from one heart to another becomes actually more solid. The friendship becomes more solid. The intimacy becomes deeper. And then this soulful connection within a couple becomes much stronger. And that's what everybody yearns for. What we find more often than not, these triggers that we're talking about, what they tend to do is they tend to reverse the polarity in a relationship. Like, and I'm not talking about roles here, like what a man's supposed to do and what a woman's supposed to do. I'm talking about the energy that a person brings into a relationship. When the conscious conversation is not on the table and people go into the blame game, what starts to happen is the woman starts to shift into one of two dynamics. Either she becomes super controlling and she needs to control everything that the man does, or he perceives her that way, or she steps into the other extreme, which is she becomes very passive. Now, both roles are going to create a lot of frustration within a woman, and she's going to drop in her standards, she's going to drop in her self-worth, and she's going to be like, where in the world did I lose myself? And when that happens, it affects the man. Because if a man doesn't feel like he's the king of his kingdom, if he doesn't feel like he's respected and he's adored, then what's going to happen is he's not going to listen to anything a woman says. He's going to start shutting her down emotionally. And also, he can take one of two dynamics. Either he won't listen to anything that she has to say, or he'll start to feel like he needs to keep everything to himself because she really won't understand, or she'll constantly demasculinate him. So that polarity is so important that it's reversed and a woman starts to feel her worth, feel her beauty, feel her juice, feel her value, and feel safe being in a feminine role, trusting the leadership of her man. And it's very important that the man rises into his leadership, claims his throne, and lives like a king. So then that polarity can come into balance. Because what people yearn for is depth. And if people don't have that polarity, and then their old wounds are, you know, subconsciously triggering a relationship, then that depth is not going to be there. That's when couples start to fall apart. People start to look elsewhere. They start to bicker at one another. Their sex life dies, you know? So really putting that polarity in place is going to bring back the spark of why two people got together in the first place, and they start to admire each other more, love each other more, respect each other more, listen to each other more, and really want to build a life together, honoring each other's feelings and working together like a team.
Yeah, and what's also very important to understand, which we talk about in Divine Union Academy, is there is a divine role between the masculine and feminine. There's a beautiful dance that takes place in a relationship. And when a couple are operating out of limitations or old programming that they've taken in watching their parents' relationships and relationships around them growing up, what happens is that beautiful dance gets lost. So now, for a union to reach its highest optimal state, that dance needs to come back into play. So what does that mean? That means that the masculine needs to understand his role towards the feminine. So the masculine needs to hold the space for the feminine. The masculine needs to hold the emotional safety for the feminine so that she can really drop into her womb, drop into her priestess frequency, and blossom feeling safe to know that she has a man by her side that is going to protect her, that is going to be there for her whenever she needs support, whenever she needs someone to be present with her. So understanding the divine roles between the masculine and feminine is also going to allow you to take your union into a deeper level of strength, because you're going to be working together harmoniously.
Yeah, that's such an important point, because like when a couple really embraces their divine role, their intimacy gets really solid and their sex life starts to thrive and blossom. And if a couple doesn't really have intimacy and doesn't have like a really fruitful sex life where they're not just making love like body to body, but soul to soul, when they do have that, then the couple is solid. The couple is like solid, and not only are they solid, they're gonna have so much fun together, they're gonna have so much joy together. Whatever trust was lost along the way is gonna get rebuilt, and the harmony of the relationship is going to grow and is going to thrive. You know, Christopher touched on a very important point, which is the roles of the feminine and the masculine. And he talked a lot about the roles of the masculine, but it's also the role of the feminine to really respect her partner. And in today's world, we live in a society where women give themselves permission to disrespect men very easily, but that can really scar a man's honor. And we need to go back to our roots, and on a root level, like on a really deep root level, we're all very tribal. We're primordial beings. So if a woman disrespects her man, he's gonna shut down. He's not gonna want to share with her. He's not gonna want to open up to her, because a man's honor is his badge, right? So really understanding your role as a woman in a relationship, like your role is to polish that crown on his head. Your role is to like really admire him and to like activate that leadership within him more. You got to be that person that has the most faith in him and believe in him, because the biggest masculine wound on the planet is men are really afraid of failure, and you got to be his number one fan. And when women give themselves permission to disrespect a man, that's it. The trust is like the bridge is broken. Like the trust is like, whoa, what have you done? And this is all happening on a subconscious level. Like a man cannot be disrespected, especially by his woman or by his beloved. And when that happens, he's not going to listen to her anymore, like Christopher said. And if a woman is not heard, that is like the end of her, because all a woman wants is for somebody to be super present with her and listen to everything she has to say, and not listen to the words that she's saying, but listen to what her heart is saying behind the words. Like what emotion is there? What emotion is carried with what she's speaking about? And if he's able to listen with his heart and hold that presence, boom, the safety is built, the friendship is built, you know, the trust is built. And that's one of the biggest things within a couple.
And that is the beautiful dance between the masculine and feminine. So everything that Now is just saying about, you know, how the feminine shows up in a relationship, and everything I was saying about how the masculine shows up in a relationship, on an energetic level, what happens is that when the man holds the space for the woman so that she can rise in her priestessness, what's going to happen is she's going to help him tap into deeper levels within his own heart. So the sacred man will come online as he holds space for his queen, his priestess, to rise in her power, in her divinity. So that's also the flow between each other. So the feminine and masculine work together to reach higher levels of consciousness, higher levels of divinity, and understanding that your relationship is the greatest gift from God, because relationships, when you are both on the same page, when you are both understanding that you are a team, that you're going to work through whatever comes your way, because the universe will bring many I don't want to call them hurdles, because that's not really the right word, but
challenges/opportunities.
Exactly. And when you're working together as a team, this is going to allow you to grow into massive, massive levels of divinity and consciousness that you didn't even know existed before.
And that's very important, because, you know, everybody, like wherever you're at in a relationship, like whether you're in a happy relationship, you just want to take it to the next level, whether you're in a relationship that got a bit sour and you're like, how do we get back on track? Whether you're in a relationship where shit hit the fan, and I don't know if I can say the word shit on the summit, but it happened, and you're trying to like figure out how to solve things. Like, we've been working with couples for 15 years, and we found, and even if you're single, wanting to like kind of like learn and master the art of relationships before you get into one, this works for everybody. And we've seen that when people start to apply these tools and these techniques, the relationship finds its way back into harmony. And the thing is, everybody deserves to have a happy relationship. Everybody deserves to have the most beautiful love life ever, because that's what everybody wants at the end of the day, to be loved and to love and to share your life with somebody that you love. And your relationship takes a big part of your life. It's what your heart is connected to. And if your relationship's blossoming, every other part of your life is going to blossom. If your relationship's dragging you down, or if it's like hurting you, or if it's just not working well, then every other part of your life is going to also resemble that, because your heart is connected to it, and you deserve to have the best love life. So we found that putting these in practice is going to give you that best love life. And the thing is, like, a lot of people think that when they get into a relationship that it's them two together, but it's actually a third thing. Like, a relationship is a third energy on its own. It's kind of like two people to get together, but then they have a pet or they have a plant, they have a relationship. And you got to take care of that relationship like it's a third energy. It's not your energy. It's not your partner's energy. You want to get out of the codependency of, what am I getting from my partner, or how am I feeding my partner on an emotional level? You want to rise within your own power as a woman, within your own power as a man, and meet each other in an interdependent way. So you're not emotionally codependent on each other anymore. That's how the relationship can really thrive. Then you want to treat your relationship like it's a third energy and really build that and invest emotionally in that. So your relationship, kind of like a bank account, is very wealthy, it's very rich, it's very solid. Then whatever life brings your way is not going to really shake the relationship, because your relationship has a really strong foundation, and you really established something that's really like, let's say, like unbreakable, right? And when you're in that place of being interdependent, what starts to happen is you start to admire your partner as an individual, and no longer are blinded by mommy issues or daddy issues. And everybody has them, right? Like, I used to have them. So you're not blinded by that when your partner is, behaving the way your partner is behaving, or saying the things that they're saying. Sometimes we put so many demands on our partner, like what we want our man to be or what we want our woman to be. And what happens is, the biggest famous quote is like, expectation kind of like dims the whole thing. I just made that quote up. But like, if we're living in that expectation of what we expect our partner to be, we're missing out on who they really are. And then, it's like if you have this beautiful painting, but you're constantly thinking like, oh, I wish the red was to the left, and I wish the tree was to the right, and why is that bird there? You're not going to really admire the art, right? And everybody has art within them. Everybody is a masterpiece somewhere, somehow. So living in that space of like, treating a relationship like a third energy is going to give you the opportunity to really observe and accept and experience the magic that your partner has to carry without the blindfold of all the expectation, whether expectation comes from yourself because you had a couple of bad relationships in the past, or society standards, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and as we spoke in the beginning, with this whole cloud nine, where when people first meet and they're in so much love, everything is better. Food tastes better, life is better. You see the colors differently in the world because you're in such a happy, beautiful place. And everything we're sharing here today with you is, when this is implemented, this is what your reality will be full time. And this is what a relationship should be. It should bring so much joy, so much happiness, so much bliss into your life. And this is, as Nada is saying, this is what everyone deserves with their union, is to constantly be in that cloud nine. It's not something that should fade away after a month or 6 months. It should be something that you are working together with your partner to constantly reinforce and build.
So So there are a lot of like sacred practices that you can do with your partner to really build that bond, build that trust, build that soulful intimacy, build that depth, build that trust, build that friendship, build that juiciness, build that laughter, build that admiration once again. And putting in time to, and this is not like date night. This is like really taking time to build the soulful connection between you and your partner. So, a lot of people, come to us, and when we share this stuff, they're like, oh, nobody taught us this. The thing is, we base our relationships on movies, on what we watched our parents do, what we watched, that aunt or uncle do, or, whatever it may be. But like, if we look at the relationships, they're really not the way we want them to be. So you want to make your relationship completely independent from what, the social dogma is, and build your own, because nothing in nature is similar. Everything is unique. So your relationship is very unique, and you want to bring your own relationships flame online. So having like sacred couple practices where you two really deepen and richen your relationship is going to bring the flavor and the frequency of your relationship online. So you have that unique love that is only yours present.
Yeah, and one of those exercises is one of the many is soul gazing. So, understanding how even just sitting in front of your partner, staring into each other's eyes for 10, 15, 20 minutes is really going to allow you both to connect on a very, very deep soul level. So this is just one powerful exercise that, we guide people through to really understand the depth of their connection and their love to their partner.
Very important. And the thing is, like, there's so much that goes into it, but this investment of really like mastering your relationship is not really about your relationship, because your relationship is just the energy of love and how you show up with the energy of love. So mastering your relationship is actually you mastering yourself and mastering your own self-love. And when you have that, you've also mastered your relationship with money, you've mastered your relationship with life, you've mastered your relationship with your kids or your friends or your community, you've mastered your relationship with your life purpose, you've mastered your relationship with whatever spiritual belief you have, because your relationship is like a mirror to how you treat, receive, give, and experience love. And love is the greatest energy that holds all your life together. And when it comes to the frequency of love, people can function from two different spectrums. Either a spectrum of like fear, so that carries like anger, resentment, grudges, guilt, shaming, blaming, you know, like victimization and disempowerment, and the kind of people breaking each other down. And we see a lot of couples that do that. Or, you can function from a frequency of love, and that is feeling safe, being vulnerable, feeling safe, being honest, knowing that you deserve and you're worthy of being heard and respected, and living in that state of joy and forgiveness and acceptance and admiration and harmony, and everything beautiful. And every relationship is going to have like a flow. Sometimes you're going to dip, sometimes you're going to move back into love. But learning how to like, and choosing, more than learning, you got to choose that, right? Because everything starts with a choice that you want to live in that harmonious state. That's your whole life's going to blossom. This is such a beautiful topic.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys sharing and being able to come on. There's so much juice in that, and that
We're really pumped up. We just got back from the gym and we're like, all right,
let's do it. Yeah,
everything.
I appreciate you guys coming on. Energies match everything that you're saying. If you were to ever see any of my stuff like that, we talk about a lot of the same concepts, and so these concepts are super useful. I know it. That's usually the case whenever things are the right way, that a lot of people will be saying them, and the energy matters, because we connect with somebody. Thank you guys so much for coming on today, and I really appreciate it. I look forward to us connecting in the future too. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
thank you
Thomas.
so much, Thomas. Thank you for having us. Thank you for creating this. And thank you, everybody, for watching. God bless.
Mhm. All right, we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to get into our next guest, Alex and Grace. Thank you guys for coming on. I won't give a spill in between sessions. I'm just going to let you guys get right into it. Please introduce your guys self, and thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yes, what's good, everybody? We're excited for the topic today, which is staying in sync. Can you share your screen?
Yes, I believe it is showing. Can you put into chat if you can see the screen just so we can make sure you can see it? But I think we should be good. So
Awesome. So a little bit about us. We unintentionally met through a Facebook group. It was not a dating Facebook group or anything like that. We were just fans of a YouTuber who had a Facebook group, and we just accidentally met on that Facebook group. So this picture here is us meeting for the first time in Sydney, Australia. So I was living in Southern California. She was in Australia, and we met, and we have been married for close to 3 years now.
yeah.
Yes. So now we live in the San Francisco Bay Area, married for almost 3 years. We were both tech employees. I used to work at LinkedIn, for example, and now we're entrepreneurs. So we have our own podcast, and then I also do life coaching as well. And I'm actually also a tech employee, so it's got a lot of things on my plate, but it's all good. And we're really passionate about integrating emotional, mental, and spiritual health, really to help people find healing and wholeness, overcoming generational trauma, and really getting you to more freedom and wholeness. And just for fun, we love doing business. We do ministry together. We do life together. But as you can see, this list is quite a lot. So there's definitely a need to stay connected as a couple. So that means more intentional boundaries, more intentional times of connection. Okay, so I would love your engagement here. We have this number, 29%. Type in the chat, what in the world is 29%?
It has to do with relationships.
Yes, that's one hint.
All right.
Type in the chat.
I'm going to reveal.
Okay. 29% of couples in the US reported feeling emotionally present and connected with their partner. That is not a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So 29 out of 100 people believe that they feel present and connected, which is absurdly low. And that number should definitely increase. So we're going to show you how. That number, those people who are listening to this are going to be part of increasing this number. So I want to start off with this quote by Amy Bloom. Intimacy is being seen and known as a person you truly are, not the person that you're trying to become or what your husband or wife expects you to be, but just who you really are.
And this ties in well, actually, with what Chris and Nada were saying even earlier about intimacy not just being physical, but also at a soul level. And that's what we really are passionate about talking about is how do you create a deeper connection where you enjoy being with each other, you can do life together, you can spur each other on and encourage each other instead of only feeling intimate in a physical sense, which is important too. That's all part of it. But yeah, we just wanted to point out like the 29% of emotional connection is truly low if you think about it. And our goal, our hope is that will increase as we continue to talk about this and lean more into emotional connection. So what causes disconnection? Here are just some of the many reasons, and feel free to drop in the chat other ideas that you personally experience or just think of, in terms of what makes you emotionally disconnected from your partner or anybody really that you're in a relationship with. Some of the top ones I would say from this list that I can personally relate with are just busyness. You have a lot going on. It's hard to just like stop what you're doing because you have so much on your plate or you have an endless to-do list. Also, even conflict avoidance, the first presenter was talking about this, like conflict is actually a healthy, good thing, but sometimes we can just be afraid of it because of our backgrounds or past pain and experiences that we don't want to talk about hard things, but it's actually a very healthy thing to grow your relationship even stronger. And another one I think that is very common is on the right side, just ignorance. Like I think a lot of the times people grew up in environments, and both me and Alex were in this kind of environment growing up, where our families didn't talk about emotions. Like what are our feelings? What is emotional connection? Like it's not normalized. So we grew up with this environment and this culture, and so we weren't equipped about the tools and also the importance of why this matters. So really, we have two parts to what we wanted to share today about very practical tips to be connected emotionally with each other in your relationship that we've personally firsthand learned, just balancing business, ministry, life together. And the first part of the two is making the time. So with anything, if you want to see growth and results and just produce fruit, you need to invest the time. There's no way around it. Oftentimes in our society, we just want the shortcut. We don't want to get the quick hack or fix. But the whole point of a relationship is you spend time with each other and enjoy it. So here are 3 rhythms in terms of your time that you can adopt, you can modify. They're just ideas. So don't see this as a rule book. It's just tools in your tool belt. So the first one is having a daily, what we call connect time. So me and Alex always, we
call it couch time.
Couch time or connect time. We're like, I want to connect with you. Like that's literally what we say. So, or, if our schedule is busier in the day, we'll be like, when do you want to connect? Like, I want to connect. And so just really, establishing a regular daily rhythm of I want to be connected. I want to know what's going on in your mind and your heart, not just talk about the circumstances in our lives or logistics. That's really important, especially when you become parents. You have so many things to juggle. You're trying to figure out logistics in your whole family and household chores and everything, and who's driving who. So having this connect time, what we're doing, we don't have kids yet, but we really wanted to establish this rhythm before we have kids so that it's not something we have to like relearn later. And we love it. It's like our favorite time of the day. And so here are just some examples of connect questions. I won't dwell on this too long. Feel free to take a screenshot of the screen if you would like. But these are just some questions that we personally ask each other. We don't ask all of them. That's a lot, but just, some we choose. So for example, just how are you feeling? Like it's a very basic question, but really identifying what's your emotion that you're feeling right now. What are some things you're grateful for today? This actually stems from the fact that we used to say, how's your day for the longest time. And then we realized, like, who are we to judge if like a day is good or not? Like everything technically is good if you change your perspective. So instead, we've been asking, what are you grateful for? What has challenged you today? And what have you learned today? Which is actually a much better perspective. Moving on to the second rhythm is our weekly date nights. So these are just non-negotiable slots on our calendar that we love. It's always a highlight of our weeks. And we try to stay unplugged or be on our devices minimally, just to not get distracted, because that can really make you absent-minded. And so it doesn't need to look fancy either. On this next slide, we actually have these 5 easy and low-cost date ideas. Actually, a couple of them are free. And there's just so many ways that you can make memories together and get out of your routine and mundane everyday routines and just have a special time connecting and feeling romantic. And if you actually, we can link our Instagram at the end, but if you go on our Instagram, we actually have 60 of these ideas for free. So you can have a picnic, you can watch a video and discuss it, your thoughts together. You can explore an area that you haven't really been before, like nearby. You can go to a $5 movie on Tuesdays. You can even have a dance party at home or in the car. We love carpool karaoke. So little things like that. And then the third one is a shared journal. So this is more, I guess, like it's an optional thing, but I highly recommend some way of like asking deeper questions to each other beyond just the daily connect times. So I'll just give you an example. So the journal that we use and we've started using is called the Together Marriage Journal. And actually, it's on sale. We're not sponsored. They're not paying us, but I literally was surprised when I saw on the website this week that it's on sale for $10 only. $10 for a stronger marriage is like the best investment. So yeah, Together Marriage Journal, like, asks you all these questions. You journal down your thoughts and love letters to each other, and it takes like 5 minutes every week, but then you get to talk about it, and it's super sweet, and it's one of our favorite things to do together now. And yeah, Alex and I will talk about communication tips.
Ooh, communication. Yes, so important. So here's three communication keys. The first is, do you want a vent or solution? So I don't know. I can't generalize for all the dudes who are listening or watching this, but sometimes we have a default to fix things, whereas women just want to be listened to, or sometimes it's vice versa. So one communication tip is just to ask your spouse, do you want to vent or do you want a solution? And that will drive the conversation. It shows that, oh, they want a solution for this, or maybe they just want to be listened to, which helps a lot.
It also helps to prevent triggers, because this used to happen where Alex would want to vent, but then I thought he wanted a solution, and I would get frustrated that he's not listening to my solution that I'm offering. So then I would get triggered and he would get triggered, feeling like, why is she not listening to me? So this is really like getting you on the same page.
Second one is practice active, non-judgmental listening. And the focus here is non-judgmental. It's really hard. It can be very difficult to not judge someone. Like if your partner says, so-and-so, I had this situation, it was so hard, blah, 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 blah. It's easy to default to, well, why didn't you do that? Or, like very judgmental accusations. But really just listen as what it is. Maybe there's a lot of things going on underneath. Maybe your partner is feeling stressed, or maybe they're just reminded of some generational triggers. There's a lot of things that could happen. So I would just look at it at a neutral lens. And then the third communication is having a 10-to-1 positive deposits ratio. This means for every negative deposit, there's 10 positive. So the ratio is really large, but if you can think back on your life, you often remember the more negative, like the criticism that you got or the fight you got in. And we often stuff down the positives. That's why there's a 10 positive to 1 negative deposit ratio.
And the whole point of like a deposit is you're depositing these positive feelings and interactions so that you can withdraw when there is something more negative or, a critical conflict or a criticism that it just basically buffers that and makes it feel much more safe and like, okay, I know this person loves me, believes in me, affirms me, and this negative interaction doesn't feel so overwhelming or weighty. And so here are just examples of deposits. This is from the Gottman Institute. If anyone is curious, they are one of the experts in research on marriage and relationships. So negative deposits are criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling, which is like just giving you the silent treatment or being emotionally unavailable. Positive deposits are showing appreciation, like, thank you so much for doing the dishes. I really appreciate that. Affection, it could be physical or it could just be, I love you and things like that. Kindness, humor, listening, which Alex talked about, and validation. It's very related, but it's basically like validating that person's emotions and experience, even if you don't agree or you don't understand. One example is Alex he struggles with what we call the B word, which is feeling bored. And I never get bored. I don't understand what it is like to be bored. But I've learned over time, I'm like, okay, I understand how you would feel, and that's okay. Just validating his emotions rather than being like, what? Why are you bored? That makes no sense. So just to recap, the first part is making and prioritizing time. So again, you can do daily connect times, weekly date nights, and also a shared journal, which is optional, but just some kind of way to consistently check in on each other and your deeper needs and hopes and dreams and what's going on, and also, you know, exchanging those love notes and affirmations. And then the second thing is to communicate to cultivate your relationship, because your words matter. Your words are either sowing death or sowing life. And so you want to make sure what you're saying from your mouth is giving life to your relationship. It's like watering a plant. You need to keep watering it instead of letting it dry out. And so how you do this is you clarify your need. Like, do you want to just vent, or do you want a solution and help? You listen actively and non-judgmentally to create a safe space for vulnerability. And lastly, make regular positive deposits. Your goal should be at least 10-to-1 ratio, although honestly, it's limitless in terms of how much you can do positive. I think we probably do a lot more than that, thankfully. So yeah, we just want to end with this quote from Dr. Gottman from the Gottman Institute. The key to a lasting marriage is not just staying together, but staying connected. And again, that's all about like being emotionally connected and being attuned to what each other needs and are feeling and are going through, so that you can support one another in the journey, not just physically intimately, but intimately in terms of being seen and known and loved. So we would love to hear, wherever you're streaming this or watching this, share with us in the chat, what are some takeaways, 1 or 2 takeaways you've gotten either from this presentation or even the former presentations, because all of them had a lot of gold nuggets. And I don't think we have questions because I've gone over time, but if you have any questions, or you want to unpack things further with us, we do have a podcast where we talk a lot about emotional health. You can find us at Let's Unpack That with Alex and Grace. That's our podcast. You can see on the slide our website as well. Or you can connect with us on social media with the Trans, TRANS, that's our last name. Or you can also get one-on-one coaching. And do you want to quickly talk about what the coaching is like and what can people expect?
Yeah. So if you ever struggled with anxiety, comparison, or identity issues or generational traumas, which I'm sure most of us have, then my coaching can help you find more healing and wholeness and just freedom in general and improve relationships.
Yeah.
So hit me up. Would love to do even a free session. I'll gift a free session to anyone who reaches out to me.
Yeah, just mention that you found us through this, the Thriving Couple Summit.
Yeah.
So yeah, thank you.
Man, I appreciate you guys coming on and presenting. You guys, if you were to check out their Instagram channel, we're friends on Instagram. And I always see you guys on there giving out some kind of juice. Every little snippet is some kind of juice. And I've told myself, I told myself, like, hey, at some point in time, I'm going to go back and watch the full thing of that. And that's happened every time. The cool thing is you're on there consistent. So I really appreciate you guys coming in and giving us some knowledge. There's so much, and you guys to cap it off. So I thought our first 2 presenters were good, and then you guys come through, and I'm like, man, that's a nice cleanup hitter right there, right? I appreciate you guys. Thank you. All right, you guys. So one last scenario is me being able to just give you guys the third leg of our section. So actually, it's not the third. Today's our fourth. So we talked in the first week. We talked about how, as an individual, you can turn things into a different situation for your relationship to be thriving. Then the second day, we talked about how you can make your relationship into a different scenario once you've done the individual things. And then on the third day, which was last week, we discussed what it would look like if you can change your communication. Today, we're going to talk about intimacy and how to build that, because that becomes the next layer after we are done talking about the other pieces. So let me get you guys some slides so that we can have a discussion about it. What's interesting is you really can't skip a day. So I feel like, it'll be useful for you to have this information, and you'll pick up what it is that I'm putting down. But if you try to skip a day, then you're going to have a hard time, because if you're not being who you need to be, it's going to be really hard for you to have the things that you want to have. And the only way for us to be who we need to be is to know how to do it. Like start really being able to work on it. So here we are, thriving couples intimacy. Let's talk about it. Let's get into what it looks like. The first thing I want you to think about is we need to have bridges, not walls, right? So how do I cultivate deep connection in my relationship? When we talk about intimacy, a lot of times the things that we want to talk about is, the first thing that at least comes to my mind, maybe it's just my mind, but it's sex. Like I think that that's the first thing until I start doing more definition on it. And so here's my definition piece is intimacy. And this, so we can all get on the same page with what I'm discussing today. Intimacy is a deep and close connection with someone where you feel safe and loved, and you have the confidence to share your body, thoughts, and or feelings openly and honesty. So that kind of changes the game a little bit, because now it gives us the ability to think past, like, if, let's just say in your relationship, if you're struggling sexually, there's probably a layer of everything that we're going to talk about that's going to benefit you and then increase your ability to have sex and do more sexually together. Okay, so start here. This is the starting spot. So let's talk about the barriers and then us being able to overcome them. So the first thing that I want you to think about is that the barriers could either be internal or external. And so the internal ones we would consider, and this has been talked about throughout the day, the internal ones can be considered something like past traumas, things that you've experienced in your history, whether it's relationship history or family history or any kind of history. Those traumas might create a barrier to the intimacy and the ideas of you developing strong intimacy in your relationship. But then there's also external things like stress, right? So both are possible, both are valid, and they all deserve some kind of paying attention to if we're going to get a little bit better and get to a different place where we can have a positive interaction in our relationship. So what are some of the scenarios? So the first one is past traumas. This is something I was just mentioning right there. The past traumas idea says that there will be things that you've experienced, and sometimes they're small, right? Sometimes they're really small, to the point where it's been something all your life that you've heard and done and or been conditioned to do that wasn't really wrong until it came to your relationship. And now there's an undoing or a switch that has to flip to be different and get to a different place. And so the best thing for you to start thinking about is, how do we really communicate differently about the traumas? There's two sides to me. Is I think that not only do we need to be able to communicate the traumas, like if, let's say I'm the one experiencing the trauma, I need to be able to communicate it, but then I want my partner to be able to accept that there is a trauma, right? So it goes hand in hand. We want to really work on being able to put those things together. If it's really bad, you might have to seek your own therapy just to be able to work through and process the traumas that go on, okay? Trust issues. So sometimes there are things in your relationship that have happened, like infidelity or lying or any other kind of addiction, and those things make trust issues inside of your relationship. But let's say that you're at a point where you're like, man, I'm done with the things that I used to do and I want to get to a different place. Well, you have to understand that there's some time that it's going to take, and there's two people in the relationship, so both have to again have the idea that says, I actually want to rebuild and do something different. Well, in order for us to do that, we have to have a lot of reps at being able to be honest with each other and be transparent with each other and see each other as partners instead of as somebody who I need to answer to. How do I create that scenario? How do I create a scenario that says, man, my partner doesn't have to answer to me? That's on one side. And then on the other side, how do I create a scenario that says, hey, I don't need to look at my partner as a parent, right? I need to really look at my partner as somebody who's loving me and that I want to get better with together. The third thing is your communication breakdowns. And I won't spend too much time on this because we talked about communication last week, but the biggest thing that I want you to focus on is to learn and practice healthy communication strategies that we learned last week. And so if you're able to focus on doing it different instead of us just staying in the same communication patterns, you're going to get to a different spot and you can start to draw closer to each other. So here's the principles that I think, and this is really important because these principles that I'm going to list to you, you're going to, if you watched all the previous presenters, you're going to see these principles that they describe pretty much in some way or another. If you know these principles, you get to spin off of these principles. If you don't interpret it incorrectly, you get to spin off these principles and start building in your relationship. This will help you to deepen the intimacy. If I was just to give you skills, you wouldn't have it. We'll talk about that in a second. But I'm giving you the principles, the things that you actually need to have. The first one is you have to be intentional, right? So in your relationship, you have to be intentional. And what I'm saying by that, if we go back to the slide where it says trust issues, this is just a good example to help you understand what intentional means. You can't go in that scenario and kind of try to like go from day to day about how you're going to be. If you're trying to do away with or start creating a scenario where you're rebuilding trust, you need to be intentional about what it is that you're doing. You have to say, look, today I'm going to do everything that means transparent. Today I'm going to do everything that means serve my partner, right? I have to be intentional about how I'm doing that scenario. Okay. And so be deliberate and purposeful in creating intimacy. The more that you're able to be intentional, you get to a different space. Vulnerability, and all of these will be hard. So I won't even preface each one of these with that concept, but I'm telling you guys right now, just because it's a principle doesn't make it easy. These are things that you're going to have to put in your bag to practice every day. And if you want to wake up on a daily basis and say, okay, I'm working on principle 2, I'm working on principle 3, really work at it. Okay. So vulnerability, it takes courage to be emotionally open and honest. Vulnerability is the deepest option for intimacy in your relationship. Brene Brown talks about vulnerability, and I love the way she talks about it. It takes us being brave enough to be vulnerable and get as deep as we possibly can deep as we possibly can. It takes a lot for us to do that. And there's a couple of reasons for that. But one thing that helps us as a couple is if we're prepared to receive vulnerability, that's helpful, right? Because that helps propel that in our relationship. We want to breed vulnerability in our relationship by being prepared to receive it, but then also being brave enough to give it. The continuously learning aspect. So don't stay in the same spot. Don't keep your relationship where it is. You can't possibly be good. You have to be willing to grow the things of your relationship. So what are the things of my relationship? Well, I need to understand my partner more. And me understanding the yesterday partner isn't good enough. I need to start understanding the today partner, right? Because that's the person that I'm with, is the today partner. Where's my partner headed? I need to understand that. But even more so, and what's useful is if we start understanding ourselves. So can you put continuous learning in your idea of principle so you can get closer in your relationship? Radical acceptance. So this is a huge deal because your partner will not be what it is that you want them to be for every single moment. So if you could learn to love and accept your partner, everything changes. And radical acceptance says, even whenever they're at their worst, can I accept them? And I always have to put this caveat on it because I think maybe I should stop putting it in because I know people are doing the best they can, but we're not talking about abusive relationships here. We're talking about thriving couples, right? So even people who are trying to thrive, a lot of times they're not at their best, right? If I'm trying to get better, I'm not going to do the best things all the time. And those mistakes that I make or that person that I'm being in the moment is not who I am. And there's two parts to that. One is I don't want you guys to let each other accept that. Like, for instance, if my partner does a violation, I don't want my partner to think like that's who they are. I want them to know that's what they did, right? So that's one. But then even for myself, I don't want to start thinking about that's who I am. That's what I do. No, I have to start saying things and thinking things different so that I can have a radical acceptance about who my partner is in any given moment. The fifth principle is fostering independence. And so this is a special thing because it's an art. And a lot of people initially when they come to me as couples, like they struggle with this aspect because they think like, us being alone won't be good for our relationship. And it kind of goes off into something else. But the truth is, the more that we can allow each other to be as we are and be able to thrive individually and focus on that and support each other through those scenarios, man, the intimacy deepens because we start we start having the energy that's needed to be closer together. Like a better me, a more independent me gives me the confidence and the courage to be closer to somebody, right? So if we're willing to, in our relationship and as individuals, foster the independence of each other, we start actually moving closer because we're stronger on our own, right? So it doesn't become a needy scenario. Instead, it becomes a wanting scenario. And when you start wanting your partner, that's magical, right? Us needing our partner, like, you know, that can sometimes not be good. But when I want my partner and I'm doing everything because I want my partner, everything changes. It's a game changer. Okay. So fostering independence is the fifth principle. So how do we expand the definition of intimacy to actually look like some useful things? And I want to talk about those and give them to you. So the first thing I would tell you guys is crisis intimacy, right? So we know some of the other intimacy factors I mentioned off the top. You know, the first thing that might come to mind, at least when I'm talking to other people, and for me, before I started learning more about intimacy, was sex. But there's a lot of options for intimacy, and the more we can delve into that, everything starts to wrap around each other. Okay, so crisis intimacy says that even when things are going wrong, how do we navigate those things together, and can we get better at applying our principles in those moments? So intellectual intimacy is about sharing of thoughts, beliefs, and ideas as a form of intimacy. And there's nothing like it, you guys. The more that you start delving into each other's thought processes without criticizing each other or beliefs or knowledge, and just growing together in those scenarios and can share ideas, the connection ability whenever you're sharing your intellect is huge. Okay. So all these actually can go with practices that you can start implementing as well in your relationship. Emotional intimacy, and we started talking about vulnerability earlier, but empathy is a huge piece of that. So I'm not just crushing somebody who's being vulnerable. A counter to that is being able to be empathetic as well. That starts to create the deep emotional connection that we need. So then there's also spiritual intimacy, and for some couples, you might already be tapping into this in different ways. But some options for spiritual intimacy is spiritual practices, which might be things like the Bible and your understanding and belief and relationship with God. But then it's also, I've included the values and ethics that you have in your relationship. One cool thing that my wife and I were doing for a while is being able to trade messages, video messages about what our intentions were and what that looks like. And that was a huge connecting factor for us to be able to just share, like, here's our focus. And we were building the focus of that, of us exchanging that, was just to be able to share with each other constantly, like what all of it looked like for us. And I think that kind of grew us into a different scenario. Adventure intimacy. And this is also a cool one. Like, one of the things that I've been watching lately and kind of seeing and being interested in is, like, us growing together means that we're not headed the opposite way. So what kinds of things are we doing to actually branch out? Well, one of the things that we can do is start creating different kinds of experiences. And you don't have to make it extravagant, but it's fun if it's extravagant. But there's availability to try new things and adventures in your home area. I guarantee it. Just be willing to do a little bit more than what you're doing right now, right? And so maybe it's a date night, but it could be also a walk night, or, you know, or something simple like finding a new trail. Like, there's so many opportunities for you to be able to create different adventures and build on this area of intimacy. So fostering intimacy through action, we just gave you a few things that you can start looking at, but how, you know, what are the actions that you can do? So the first one, and again, I won't spend too much time on the communication factor because we talked about it last week, but just being able to initiate an open and honest communication. So there's usually a choice, like, do I want to close dishonest relationship that's safe, or do I want to open an honest communication that means connectedness, right? And for the most of us, we would choose the second, right? And so us just being able to initiate that is a huge deal. Sharing experiences and adventures together, we just talked about that, but you know, there's examples that I have here that kind of, and if you guys wanted to go back and rewatch the video just to kind of see, like, there's people who, the more experiences you share together, then you start to actually grow together. And I have a couple who rekindle their intimacy by taking a dance class together, right? Which that helps us to really, and by the way, dancing is one of those adventures that maybe you have never done together, and it'd be huge for you just to try it out. Okay. So the more we're able to share experiences, it starts growing and us together and starts building on us in a different kind of way. And then practicing affirmation appreciation. A couple of weeks ago, we actually talked to somebody who was showing us how to do appreciation. Go back and watch that video. That was a helpful one. But this is something that helps us to build closer together and raise our intimacy up. Are you affirming each other, right? Are you showing appreciation in the most simple times? Even when it doesn't matter, say that I appreciate you. And then setting and supporting boundaries. So now I talk about boundaries a different way. And so I want you guys to be able to hear this out. I don't talk about boundaries, and I think it's actually a sad thing that happens. I don't talk about boundaries in a way that says you need to set boundaries with other people. Like, I don't want to set boundaries with my partner and tell them what to do. I want to know the boundaries that I'm setting for myself. And the reason we don't set boundaries with somebody else is because if they're not willing or in that place, I don't need to be powerless or try to create somebody else's behaviors different. I need to figure out what it's going to take for me to do something different to be okay, right? So how do I do that? Well, I do that by saying, I know these are my boundaries and this is what I'm going to do. Well, how does that happen in a couple relationship? If I set my boundaries with my limits and the things that I would do, and I can share that with my partner, and they're in a place of loving and being able to acknowledge that and go along with that, it works out perfectly. Because now we can say, okay, hey, I want to help you with that scenario, and let's move on it together. Okay. So it's really important that we switch that in our mind so we don't grow in powerlessness or start creating powerless scenarios in our relationship. Forgiveness and letting go of grudges. So a lot of things that we accidentally do is we create punishment traps and we create scenarios that make us hang on to things. Forgiveness is not about your partner. If you forgive them, it doesn't mean that you approved of their behavior. If you forgive them, it means that you're ready to have a free space in your heart, right? And in bingo, there was always that middle spot, and we were so grateful to have it. Forgiveness is like creating that bingo spot in the middle, right? Can you create forgiveness so you can have one extra spot in your heart to be able to move on things, right? So forgiveness is not about your partner. Forgiveness is about you being able to say, I need a different kind of space and I need to move on something different. The lack of forgiveness, and this might be a challenge for us to accept, the lack of forgiveness is your attempt to create punishment, which fully makes sense because usually when we're hurt, the opportunity after being hurt is saying, like, how can I fix this scenario? And that fix this scenario a lot of times is I need to punish. So we're trying to hold somebody accountable for their behaviors, but we're not really in a position to ultimately do that. Okay. And so being able to let go and being able to forgive are something that is going to allow you to move closer to somebody because you're not holding on to the hardest thing possible. So my idea for us being able to thrive in intimacy is for us to really think about how can I rewire my mind and start thinking differently about how it goes. It can't go outside in. It has to go inside out. So if you're willing to work on yourself as far as understanding the vulnerability and all the principles that we talked about, then you start creating a place in your relationship for how intimacy could happen. If you're waiting for your partner to get to a different spot or to do something different before you start creating intimacy, you're going to keep waiting. Matter of fact, you're going to build something in your own heart and you're going to distance the ability to be close to each other and create intimacy. So for you to change it, you're going to have to start building on the inside, becoming that person who's willing to do all the principles that we talked about here, which you can freeze the screen, all the principles that we talked about here, start working on those. And then you start creating that in your relationship. That's your opportunity. That's the way to think about building intimacy. It won't be about the skills that you have. I promise you, you can have all the skills in the world. It'll be about who you're being in these scenarios. That gives you the best opportunity to change intimacy in your relationship and create a thriving relationship. Man, we're way over today, but I think you guys got tons of juice in this conversation. I hope you guys all have a good evening, and we'll talk to you soon.